when they're healthy. But Jeff, Burrow coming off that wrist surgery, what are you hearing about his progress?
Well, you know, Joe Burrow at this point feels like he has no real setbacks in terms of his physical demeanor, the things that he can do on the practice field. The question, of course, is how hard he should push it. I can tell you, for instance, wide receiver Jamar Chase has echoed a sentiment that Zach Taylor, the head coach, has also shared with Burrow, which is don't push it too hard. Listen to your body. You are a veteran in this league now. Make sure that you will understand you're going to be just fine when you get to the season. He doesn't have to prove anything to anyone. That is sort of the sentiment that people just keep telling Burrow, because the competitive spirit does come out. They want him to be as cautious as possible so that when he does get to the regular season, there is no question, no wonder about the health of that wrist.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting about this, not a common injury for quarterbacks. It's not something where you can just look at, three other quarterbacks in the league and say, okay, what was the protocol to return to throwing and not have, limitations on what you can do. He's talked a lot about just gaining, mobility and flexibility like back in his wrist. Like, it's obviously important for somebody that throws for a living. It'd be different if he was a tight end or played fullback. So I think, because he's been a guy that's been injured in the past, because he's had to rehab in the past, he understands that it isn't always going to look the same. And having some patience with this probably makes the most sense. And so, look, I think he's looked great doing the stuff that he's done. I think they're probably just trying to be smart about the rehab so it's not something that flares up during the season. And I think Cincinnati ultimately end up being better off because of it.
Yeah, so I really wanted to talk about this because there was a lot of talk about Joe Burrow's injury and the potential that it's actually more serious than people realize, because as he just kind of mapped out, that it's not an injury that quarterbacks have, that it's a unique injury, a unique surgery that in other sports or other issues that it really affects the throwing and that it could be potentially career ending. And someone who's been saying that a lot was Nick Wright from First Things First. And now I personally disagree with that. First off, I think that's way too extreme of a statement. The truth is you never know how someone's going to recover, right? And to be very clear, I think Joe Burrow is going to make a full recovery. But as someone who's been injured a lot, who's been around a lot of injured people, physical therapy, all that type of stuff, you don't have any idea how someone's going to recover. It could be the most basic elementary surgery that you get. Some people you can never really truly make a full recovery. That's a dirty little secret. It's when they say, oh, he's fully recovered, you can get back. The most you can get is 99%. It's just, you're never 100% what you were. It's just not possible. You have scar tissue buildup. Doesn't mean that you're not going to compete. Doesn't mean that you're not going to have the same numbers. But even if you, let's say you could throw for 100 yards in the air, obviously just making stuff up. Even if you get surgery and you do it again and you throw 100 yards, you're like, see, he's fully recovered. No, because then afterwards, you're most likely going to be extra sore. Your range of motion, it might not be exactly the same. So there's never truly 100% recovery. And that's why injuries pile up. Like Travis Kelce famously said recently, he's had like 10 surgeries and not a day goes by that he doesn't feel every single one of them. It's a very real thing. With all that said, I think Joe Burrow will make a full recovery. I think in a way, some of these injuries hopefully help him be smarter. And it's not to say that he hasn't been smarter, but he's even talked about the fact that, all these injuries and recovering has forced him to kind of evaluate his life for the most part, right? And his mortality within the NFL and being injured in it. And it's a lot of things that players don't always necessarily go through. Famously, it hit Andrew Luck really hard and he just couldn't handle it anymore. And I think someone like a Joe Burrow knows what's at stake, knows what he wants. He sleeps, eats, and dreams about football. Football is everything to him. Everything to him. And he wants to compete at the highest level. He wants to win. He wants to win a Super Bowl. He wants to win an MVP. He wants to be an all-time great. He wants to be in the Hall of Fame. And I can guarantee you, he looks at Patrick Mahomes and says, I'm better than you. I know you're great, but I am better than you. And he wants to prove that to the world. He wants to prove, whether he's right or wrong, he wants to prove to the world that he is the best quarterback. And I guarantee you, it haunts him. It haunts him that Patrick Mahomes is having all this success both on and off the field. It haunts him because he knows that he should be there. He should be the one that everyone's talking about. He should be the one that everyone's talking about being the next GOAT, not Mahomes. And that's how he feels. And it's a great way to it's a great thing to have when you're coming from a competitive perspective and a competitive fire. So better believe that Joe Burrow is doing everything he can to put himself in the best possible position to not only fully recover, but also stay healthy. But that is what they're also talking about, saying like, hey, we know how much you care, but you got to sometimes hold yourself back. And that is where good coaching and good doctors and just, strength and conditioning and medical professionals as a whole are good at planting those seeds of letting someone know when to push them, when to pull back. And the truth is after you get surgery or just an injury as a whole, it's always 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Always, always, always. Recovery is not linear. It is not just you just get better, day by day by day. That is not how it works. Again, I've had endless surgeries. I couldn't even count. Multiple surgeries. It's just always 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. It's just up and down, up and down, up and down. You have a great practice, a great workout. You're playing the best you ever played. And then after, a few hours later or the next day, you're incredibly sore and swollen. And it doesn't mean that you injured it or hurt it anymore. It's just that's your new reality. And a lot of times with Joe Burrow, but that he's probably facing, especially with all these injuries, and it's just also accepting this is my new reality. Okay, I can still ball out. I'm recovered. I can do all this stuff. But hey, the next day I'm more sore than I was a couple years ago. And Kobe Bryant talked about this years and years and years ago, where he was saying I can still ball out. And this is when he was still theoretically in his prime. He's like, I can still ball out. I can still do everything I could do when I was 22, 23, 24, 25 years old. The only difference is that I got to douse myself in ice. I got to, and to get ready for the game, I got to do this whole routine to warm my body up. So, and it's just, again, someone like a Kobe Bryant had to learn that, accept that, and then learn how to navigate that, learn how to figure out that, and also learn how to be able to look himself in the mirror and say, I'm still that guy. I can still ball out. I can still do everything that I could when I was 25, 26, but I just have to do a few other things in order to not only be able to do that, but then also recover afterwards. And I feel like that's just where Joe Burrow is in his journey. And it's just happened earlier in his football career than, unfortunately, a lot of other quarterbacks or a lot of other players are fortunate enough to not have to deal with some of the injuries. But again, the good news is that Joe Burrow cares so much. Joe Burrow cares more about football than I think potentially than anyone else in the NFL right now. I mean, he just cares so much about it. He's not all about all the other stuff. He's not all about the glitz and the glamour. I know because he smokes the cigars and has some, snappy sound bites and stuff, you can maybe some outsiders or some non-Bengals fans could potentially feel that way, but he is all business. So that's why I think it bodes well for Joe Burrow, and I just think that the Cincinnati Bengals can and will have a lot of success with him. But those are just my thoughts. I would absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about Joe Burrow and kind of his recovery and where he's going to be and just the Bengals as a whole? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions, let's get in some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I would absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.